Admiral Vorthak pressed his three-fingered hand against the command console, his purple scales shimmering with what his species called victory anticipation. The Xerion Dominion had conquered 412 star systems in the past solar cycle alone. Today they would add Earth to that tally. Status report, Commander Xilth, Vorthak commanded, his voice carrying the authority of someone who had never, not once, tasted defeat. Sir, our long-range scanners show the target planet has minimal technological infrastructure. Primitive chemical propulsion, basic energy generation, no planetary shields whatsoever. Xiltha's mandibles clicked in what passed for amusement among their kind. Intelligence suggests they're still using combustible materials for warfare. How quaint. Vorthak allowed himself a rare smile. The Xerion fleet stretched across space like a metallic storm cloud, 1,000 warships strong. Each vessel carried enough firepower to glass a continent. Their target? Some backwater farm world called Earth that had somehow caught the attention of the Galactic Trade Council. Apparently, Xilth continued, consulting his holographic display, this Earth produces something called wheat that's become quite popular in the outer rim markets. Command wants us to secure the agricultural zones and eliminate any resistance. Resistance? Vorthak laughed, a sound like grinding metal. From farmers? Oh, this should be amusing. Set course for the third planet. Begin standard intimidation protocols. The massive dreadnought Death's Whisper led the charge, its hull bristling with plasma cannons and matter disruptors. Behind it, destroyer squadrons moved in perfect formation, their targeting systems already locked onto major population centers. 3 hours later, the fleet entered Earth's solar system. Vorthak stood on the bridge, watching the blue-green planet grow larger on the view screen. Pretty little thing, really. Shame they'd have to scar it up a bit to make their point. Sir, we're receiving a transmission from the surface, Communications Officer Yex announced, her voice tinged with surprise. Put it through. Let's hear what these primitives have to say. The view screen flickered, and suddenly they were looking at a human. Male, middle-aged, wearing what appeared to be some sort of agricultural garment covered in dirt. He was standing in front of what looked like a primitive dwelling surrounded by golden fields of grain. Howdy there, space folks, the human said, apparently addressing the entire Xerion Dominion fleet with the same casual tone one might use to greet a neighbor. Name's Jake Miller. I reckon you're here about the wheat situation. Vorthak blinked all four of his eyes in sequence. In 3 centuries of conquest, no one had ever greeted the Xerion Dominion with, howdy. I am Admiral Vorthak of the Xerion Dominion, he began, activating the translation matrix to maximum intimidation settings. You will surrender your agricultural resources and submit to imperial rule, or face annihilation. Jake Miller scratched his head, leaving a streak of dirt across his forehead. Well now, that's a mighty big ask, Admiral. See, this here's my farm. Been in the Miller family for 6 generations. My great-great-granddaddy would roll over in his grave if I just handed it over to the first bunch of purple fellas who showed up asking nicely. Asking nicely? Vorthak's voice rose an octave. I have 1,000 warships pointed at your planet. Oh, I see, Jake nodded, glancing up at the sky where the fleet was now visible as tiny dots. Mighty impressive light show you got going up there. But here's the thing, Admiral. You want our wheat? You're gonna have to come down here and take it. Commander Xilth leaned toward Vorthak. Sir, shall I begin orbital bombardment? We can eliminate this. Jake Miller, and secure the agricultural zones within the hour. But something in the human's demeanor gave Vorthak pause. There was no fear in those strange, round eyes. No trembling in that dirt-stained voice. Just confidence. Unshakable, inexplicable confidence. Tell me, Jake Miller, Vorthak said slowly, are you not afraid? Do you not comprehend the power arrayed against you? Jake chuckled, a sound that somehow managed to be both warm and slightly unsettling. "Oh, I comprehend just fine, Admiral. Question is, do you?" Before Vorthak could respond, his tactical officer's voice cut through the bridge. "Sir." Multiple contacts rising from the planet's surface. They're what, Officer Krex?" "They're tractors, sir. Agricultural vehicles. Approximately 50,000 of them, ascending through the atmosphere." Vorthak stared at the tactical display in complete bewilderment. 50,000 tractors? What in the name of the dark nebula were these humans thinking? "Sir," Krex continued, his voice climbing toward panic, "the tractors are armed. Repeat, the agricultural vehicles are armed and approaching attack formation." On the view screen, Jake Miller's grin widened. "See, Admiral, there's something you space types never seem to understand about farmers. We're used to dealing with pests. Big pests, small pests, flying pests, crawling pests. Doesn't much matter to us." The first wave of tractors crested Earth's atmosphere, and Vorthak got his first clear look at them. These weren't the primitive farming implements he'd expected. These were modified. Heavily modified. Plasma shields shimmered around reinforced hulls. Missile pods had been welded to harvester arms. What appeared to be some sort of energy cannon protruded from where the grain hopper should have been. What are those weapons?" Zilth whispered. Jake's voice crackled through the comm. "Oh, those old things. Mostly repurposed alien tech we've picked up over the years. You'd be surprised how many folks like yourselves have tried this exact same routine. Amazing what you can do with a little creative engineering and a whole lot of spite." "Impossible," Vorthak snarled. "Our intelligence reports showed no advanced technology. No weapons manufacturing. No military infrastructure." "Well, that's the funny thing about intelligence reports," Jake said, his tone now carrying a distinctly sharp edge. "They tend to miss the details. Like how every farmer worth his salt knows how to fix anything with spare parts and determination. Or how we've been quietly collecting souvenirs from every would-be conqueror who's shown up in the past 50 years. The tractor fleet formed up in a loose sphere around the Xerion ships, moving with surprising coordination." Vorthak's tactical display lit up like a festival as target locks began appearing across his fleet. "Sir, they're hailing us again," Yex reported. "Admiral," Jake's voice carried a new authority now, "I'm gonna make you the same offer we made the Zephyrian Empire, the Crystallar Federation, and about a dozen other groups whose names I can't pronounce. You can turn those pretty ships around and head back where you came from, or you can find out why Earth wheat is the only crop in the galaxy that's fertilized with the ashes of failed invasion fleets." Vorthak's confidence cracked like ice under pressure. "You're bluffing. Farmers cannot defeat the Xerion Dominion." "Farmers? Who said anything about just farmers?" Jake's laugh was genuinely amused now. "Admiral, you're looking at the Earth Agricultural Defense Cooperative. We got crop dusters, cattle ranchers, vineyard owners, even a few folks who grow those fancy hydroponic vegetables. And every single one of us has had just about enough of people trying to steal our lunch." The tactical officer's voice cut through the bridge chatter. "Sir, I'm reading massive energy buildups from the agricultural vessels. Whatever those weapons are, they're powering up fast." Vorthak found himself in an impossible situation. The most powerful fleet in the galaxy, held at bay by farmers in flying tractors. The absurdity of it would have been laughable if not for the very real weapon signatures painting his ships. "Last chance, Admiral," Jake's voice carried the weight of absolute certainty. "You can leave now with your dignity intact, or you can explain to your superiors how the mighty Xerion Dominion got their fancy purple butts handed to them by a bunch of humans who just wanted to grow their crops in peace." For the first time in his military career, Admiral Vorthak found himself genuinely considering retreat. Not because he was outgunned, but because something about this situation felt fundamentally wrong. Like walking into a trap that was so obvious it couldn't possibly be a trap, except it clearly was. "Sir?" Commander Ziltha's voice was tight with tension. Orders? Vorthak stared at the view screen, where Jake Miller waited patiently, dirt still streaked across his forehead, confidence radiating from every line of his weathered face. Behind him, golden wheat swayed in an alien breeze, beautiful and serene and completely at odds with the standoff playing out in orbit. The silence stretched between two species, two ways of life, two very different ideas about what constituted real strength, and somewhere in that silence, Admiral Vorthak began to suspect that the Xerion Dominion had made a very, very big mistake. Admiral Vorthak's decision came with the subtle elegance of a meteor hitting a moon. All ships, prepare for combat engagement. These primitives need to learn their place in the galactic hierarchy. Jake Miller's response was immediate and surprisingly cheerful. Well, that's a real shame, Admiral. Boys and girls, looks like we got ourselves some slow learners up there. Betty, would you mind showing our guests what happens when you mess with Earth agriculture? A new voice crackled through the comm system, distinctly female and carrying the kind of authority that came from years of managing unruly livestock. Copy that, Jake. This is Betty Hawkins from the Montana Cattle Ranchers Coalition. Admiral Purple Scales, you picked the wrong day to threaten our livelihood. Vorthak watched in growing horror as what he had initially dismissed as a modified tractor revealed its true nature. The hull plating shifted and reconfigured, transforming the agricultural vehicle into something that looked disturbingly like a Xerion heavy fighter, only bigger and angrier. That's impossible, Commander Zilth whispered. Shape-shifting technology is theoretical at best. The energy requirements alone would be, Commander, Tactical Officer Krex interrupted, his voice climbing toward hysteria, all 50,000 agricultural units are transforming. I'm reading weapon signatures that don't match anything in our database. Sir, some of these energy readings are off the charts. On the view screen, Betty Hawkins appeared to be sitting in what looked like the cockpit of a thoroughly militarized combined harvester. Behind her, Vorthak could see displays showing tactical information that would make a Xerion War College professor weep with envy. See, Admiral, Betty continued conversationally, the thing about farmers is we're used to adapting. Bad weather, crop diseases, market fluctuations, alien invasions. It's all just another problem that needs solving. The first volley from the Earth Agricultural Defense Cooperative came without warning. 50,000 modified farm vehicles opened fire simultaneously, and the space around the Xerion fleet erupted into a light show that made supernovas look dim, but these weren't ordinary weapons. Instead of the expected energy beams or missile swarms, streams of what appeared to be seeds began impacting the Xerion ships. Vorthak watched in confusion as the projectiles bounced harmlessly off their armor plating. Is that it? He demanded. They're throwing seeds at us? His answer came 30 seconds later when Officer Krex's panicked voice filled the bridge. Sir. The seeds are growing. Repeat, the organic projectiles are somehow growing on our hull. Through the view screen, Vorthak could see vines and root systems spreading across the Death's Whisper's armor like a green infection. But these plants were clearly not natural. They pulsed with bioluminescent energy, and wherever they took hold, his ship's systems began failing. It's some sort of bioweapon, Zilth reported, staring at his console in disbelief. The plant matter is interfacing with our technology somehow. Sir, we're losing power to secondary systems across the fleet. Jake Miller's voice cut through their growing panic. That there's courtesy of our friends down in the Amazon Agricultural Collective. Turns out when you cross alien biotech with Earth flora, you get some real interesting results. Hope you boys weren't too attached to your fancy computers. The tactical display showed a disaster unfolding in real time. Ships throughout the Xerion fleet were becoming entangled in rapidly growing vegetation that seemed to feed on their power systems. But the humans weren't done. Phase 2, people, announced a new voice, this one with what sounded like a heavy European accent. This is Henrik Olsen from the Nordic Greenhouse Consortium. Time to show these invaders what happens when you threaten our growing season. The temperature around the Xerion fleet began dropping rapidly. Vorthak watched his environmental readings plummet as some sort of localized weather control system kicked in. Ice began forming on his ship's hulls, and the bioweapons that had been draining their power suddenly went dormant. Clever, Vorthak admitted grudgingly. Neutralize their own bioweapons to prevent us from adapting, then switch to environmental warfare. But his admiration was short-lived. The ice wasn't just freezing his ships, it was conducting some sort of electrical current. Lightning began arcing between vessels as the humans turned the Xerion fleet into a giant battery farm. "Sir," Krex reported, his voice now completely stripped of military composure, "we've lost 40% of our ships to system failures. The remaining vessels are experiencing cascading power grid collapses." Through the chaos, Jake Miller's voice remained infuriatingly calm. "Now, I don't want y'all thinking we're being unreasonable here. This is just a friendly demonstration of what Earth agriculture is capable of when properly motivated. We haven't even broken out the heavy equipment yet." "Heavy equipment?" Vorthak couldn't help but ask. "Oh, sure. Sarah Kim down in the Pacific Rice Cooperative has been working on some real interesting applications of gravitational field manipulation. And don't get me started on what the Australian Outback Mining and Farming Alliance has been up to with their new drilling techniques." As if summoned by his words, space around the Xerion fleet began to warp and twist. Several of Vorthak's remaining ships found themselves suddenly accelerating toward each other, caught in artificially generated gravity wells that seemed to originate from Earth's surface. Meanwhile, massive drilling platforms rose from the planet below, their boring mechanisms replaced with what appeared to be some sort of matter displacement cannons. They fired in sequence, and Vorthak watched in horror as chunks of his fleet simply vanished, teleported to who knew where by weaponized mining technology. "This is impossible," he muttered, watching centuries of Xerion military doctrine crumble before his eyes. "Farmers cannot possess this level of technological sophistication." "Admiral," came yet another voice from Earth, this one carrying the distinctive drawl of what his translation software identified as American Southern dialect. "This here's Marcus Thompson from the Tennessee Moonshine and Advanced Propulsion Cooperative. Y'all seem a mite confused about what we country folk are capable of." The space around Vorthak's command ship suddenly filled with what appeared to be mason jars. Old-fashioned glass containers that his sensors identified as containing some sort of fermented organic compound. They drifted lazily toward the Death's Whisper, seemingly harmless, until they exploded, but these weren't ordinary explosions. Each jar detonated in a cascade of exotic matter reactions that his science officer claimed were theoretically impossible. The blasts didn't just damage his ships, they seemed to rewrite local physics, creating pockets of space where his engines simply stopped working and his weapons wouldn't fire. "Moonshine-powered exotic matter bombs," Marcus explained helpfully. "Been perfecting the recipe for about 20 years now. Turns out corn liquor makes an excellent base for dimensional instability reactions." Who knew? By now, Admiral Vorthak's mighty fleet had been reduced to fewer than 100 functional ships, all of them trapped in a maze of hostile vegetation, electrical storms, gravity wells, and physics-defying explosion clouds. His crew looked to him for orders, but for the first time in his military career, he had absolutely no idea what to do. "Jake Miller," he said finally, his voice carrying none of its earlier authority. "What do you want?" "Same thing we wanted an hour ago, Admiral. For you to turn around and go home. Difference is, now you understand why that's your best option." Vorthak looked around his damaged bridge, then at the tactical display showing the pathetic remnants of what had been the galaxy's most feared invasion fleet. Pride warred with practicality, and for once in his life, practicality won. "All remaining ships," he commanded, his voice heavy with defeat, "prepare for immediate withdrawal from this system." "Now that's what I like to hear," Jake said, and Vorthak could practically hear the grin in his voice. "Y'all come back anytime you want to try our wheat. But next time, maybe try asking politely first. We're much friendlier when folks use their manners." As the shattered Xerion fleet limped away from Earth, Admiral Vorthak contemplated the report he would have to file with High Command. How exactly did one explain that the galaxy's most powerful military force had been defeated by farmers using weaponized agriculture? Behind them, Earth continued its slow rotation, its golden wheat fields swaying peacefully in the breeze, tended by the most dangerous farmers in the galaxy. The last thing Vorthak heard before jumping to hyperspace was Jake Miller's voice, carried across the void with infuriating cheerfulness. "Y'all drive safe now, and remember to tell your friends about Earth. Wheat. Best in the galaxy, guaranteed pest-free." In the end, the Xerion Dominion learned the same lesson that every previous would-be conqueror had discovered the hard way. Never mess with a farmer's livelihood. They tend to take it personally.